Recording in progress.
Hey, thanks for doing it.
Yeah, no worries.
Is she?
Okay, I think we're good. Yep. Good morning, everyone. So we'll get started. And just so you know, there's about 22 folks online at this moment, so we certainly have a quorum. All right, so a couple things before we get started. Number one is the packet, hopefully you have it in front of you. We will reference the annual meeting packet frequently. Number two, if you wish to speak, please state your name clearly. Well, first off, raise your hand. And if you're online, you can hit the chat button that says you have a question, and then Ken will unmute you so that we can hear your question here live. But if you're in the sanctuary, raise your hand, state your name clearly, and then Kurt will come with the microphone so we can hear what you have to say, as well as those online can hear you too. When voting, when we have a vote and a motion, Brenda's going to state the motion and ask if anybody wants to vote to make that motion, and then you'll either vote to approve or vote against. And Nancy will be Nancy, our secretary, will be recording the meeting minutes. So number one is Nancy can confirm that we have a quorum. We have a quorum. There you go. And then Phil, you want to do a devotion? Great, thank you.
Let us pray. As we gather together this day, we pray that we can live to our values of being a church that values people's faith journey, that we are a church that serves our neighbor in love, and that we also welcome all people in our midst. May all that we do and say reflect those values in our meeting and in our life together. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you. So if you'll go 2 slides, I believe. The next one will be Robert's Rules. Great. I'm going to ask Brenda to come up, and she'll talk about Robert's Rules. For those of you that remember my job the last couple of years, I've I've gotten really good at not doing it.
It's actually very simple, very streamlined, but in a setting like this, it really helps the meeting move along. So when we're done discussing a topic that needs to be voted on, I will state what I think the motion is and ask for someone from the floor to make the motion. And Kurt will bring the microphone and just state your name so that Nancy can properly record it. Then before we can move forward, we'll need someone to second it with the same process. I will restate the motion, and then we can talk about the motion itself if you'd like, change it, modify it. When we get to a point where we're ready, I'll call for a vote, and we'll all raise our hands, and then I will announce the results of the vote. It's very simple. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Brenda. All right, next slide, please. So, do you want to handle the minutes? Any minutes?
So the meeting minutes from last year's meeting, annual meeting, are on pages 4 and 5. I was asked if anyone, hopefully everyone has reviewed them. Does anyone have any questions, changes, anything to discuss? Anyone online? In that case, Cork?
I don't know, just for clerical sake, on number 12, should the new council members' names be included where the X's currently are?
Ask that again, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
I'm sorry. On page 5, where it shows the nominations, elections of new council members,
Yes,
there's X's where it looks like new council members should be included.
yes,
Just for the record, they should probably be put in there.
yes. Brenda Terulli and Chris Barone.
Made the motion, and Chris.
Greg closes then and requests a motion to approve the new council members. Oh, do we know who made the motion and who seconded it? I can't hear anything.
And Nancy, it appears that we don't have the record of who made the motion and seconded the motion.
Is that a problem for anyone moving forward?
Well, you could do exactly what he just said, and then just make a quick vote and approve those number 12, that
Yeah, approve it with the correction
Brenda,
stating that we don't know who it was, basically.
yeah.
So the motion would be
So,
approve the minutes, even with the exclusion. So the motion then would be to approve the minutes from last year with excluding the names that, who made the motion and who seconded.
is there someone who would like to make the motion?
No, we don't know the names. We don't know.
We don't know the names. We're going to include a statement that says we excluding the names. I'm sorry, I am so deaf. I
We
can't
don't
hear.
know who made the motion last year.
No,
We don't know that.
Wait, let her finish the sentence. We do know that Chris and Brenda. Right, what's missing are the names of the people who made the nomination and the second. So we would like to make a motion. Go ahead.
It says that Glenn Clauser made the motion, and the exclusions are the people that were being appointed to council, so we just need to insert the council members' names there.
you're right.
I see. Yeah, I got you.
I don't. Oh. Oh, Glenn made the motion, right. Glenn made the motion. So what we're doing is redrafting item 12. Glenn Clauser requested a motion to approve the new council members, Brenda Terulli and Chris Barone. But we don't have the identity of the person who seconded the motion.
Right.
Correct.
So we are proposing to amend the minutes to put in place of the first X's, the words Brenda Terulli and Chris Barone, with a period. And after that,
And I seconded it.
Unknown second. Go ahead, Kurt.
And I seconded it.
Kurt seconded. Kurt Rank seconded.
Kurt Rank seconded it.
There we go. Well, thank you, Corky.
Thank you. It's fine.
No,
It's
a
what
good-
we,
it's a
it's
good
what
one.
we should do. So, is there anyone who would like to second the motion? Alice Carper seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Let's call for a vote. All in favor? Raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Clark.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. And then the next slide. Great. So obviously the last 2 years actually have been pretty amazing, to put it mildly. And but I think that as a council, I think we're pretty proud of what we've accomplished. I think as a church, we should all be very proud that we're in here today and still what I would consider thriving. So a couple things we want to talk about, that I'd like to talk about over the next 3 slides, are what we've accomplished from a strategic plan perspective, secondly, what we've accomplished from a financial perspective, and thirdly, sort of the goals moving forward for council. So from a strategic plan perspective, we continued implementing the actions recommended in the strategic plan by creating the ministry themes of faith journey, service, and communications, and restructuring the ministry teams. Again, it was meant to really have all the organizations working together and knowing what each one's doing so we can accomplish more. We also created a COVID-19 task force to address all the issues surrounding reopening, safety, not just for the church, but for the Learning Center as well. We also created the Council Corner, which is published in the Dayspring to provide monthly council updates. Hopefully, y'all are aware of what I'm referencing there. It's just meant to give sort of a bullet point of what we talked about at each council meeting, what we're focused on, and what our goals are. We hired a new Learning Center director, Nikki Bryan, and Nikki will be speaking in a moment. And the Learning Center, which, again, I won't steal Nikki's thunder, but the Learning Center also is thriving, which is obviously a real important ministry for the church. We also, of course, hired Jamie Van Nordstrand. Did I say that correctly? Close. Okay. Anyway, Jamie, which we all, I think, have met by now, to fill the role of the newly created Youth and Family Minister. And lastly, we reestablished the Mutual Ministry team to act as the Human Resources Department for Christ Lutheran. I'll just speak to that for one moment because I don't think Lou's here. But the Mutual Ministry team is meant to act as the HR unit of the church. It's also meant to give Phil some peace of mind knowing that some of the issues that normally folks would come to him to address or have issues with, that they have somebody else to go to. I can tell you that team has been very active already in terms of, I know they've reestablished the handbook, they worked through that. They also have been meeting with some of the other leaders. Yeah, and that's and the hiring process. In fact, right now I know we're looking for an assistant director at the Learning Center, so they've also been very active there. So it's led by Lou Savant, but that team is quite honestly, it's a bunch of really, really smart, intelligent individuals, and they spend a ton of time already. So I'm glad we've reestablished that. Next slide, please. Financially, a couple things we were able to do over the last 2 years, but in particular this past year, was substantially increase our working capital fund. So working capital fund, so I know that's one thing, sometimes folks are not real familiar with what that means. The bottom line is, in 2, 3, 4 years ago, there'd be times during the summer where contributions were not sufficient to pay staff. So what we had to do was borrow funds from from the trustees. We'd have to borrow money from the trustees or from other sources of money that was designated and then repay it back. So what we were able to do is establish a working capital fund. It was $20,000, now it's $50,000, so that no matter what happens, if there's times that are slow during the summer, obviously, which, given COVID, there's a chance that could be, right, if we're still dealing with this, we no longer have to borrow from other sources. Number two is we allocated $150,000 towards the 3 years expected costs for the youth and family minister, which basically means we have that money set aside, knowing that no matter what happens in terms of contributions near term, that we know Jamie has stability and she'll be here to really work and develop that role, which I'm super excited about. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't consider, in fact, I can tell you what it does mean. It means that we still need to give thought when we are contributing to not just towards Ian's position, but also Jamie's position separately. Because obviously we've seen what Enid has done, which is beyond amazing, and I expect the same from Jamie. We also have replaced the windows on the Learning Center side of the church. Maybe you noticed that recently, that all the long windows on both sides have been replaced in the last 2 months to help the Learning Center as well. And currently, we're in the midst of the kitchen remodel, which should be hopefully finished shortly, I believe, within the next 2 weeks or so. You think that's right, Mike? Okay. Yeah, there's been some COVID issues as well, I know. So so we're close. And so, and then lastly, of course, we upgraded the audio technology here in the sanctuary with new digital equipment, which was through the gifts of many of you here today. So all great things. And of course, in a moment, we'll go through the budget. Next slide, please. Okay, moving forward. Certainly one of the things I know the primary focus for council is to focus on the strategic plan, so much so that during the last year, the first item we discussed at each council meeting was the strategic plan and discuss each theme and the goals moving forward. Which I think we all know, because we haven't been able to have theme night or team night, it's been challenging, but hopefully every theme is working together. Our goal, of course, is to continue to support Jamie as youth and family minister, to help her create programs that are appealing to Christ Lutheran's youth and those in our community. Focus on providing support for Nikki, the Learning Center director, to ensure the Learning Center continues to gain community awareness as a high-quality center at a reasonable cost for children ages 6 months to 12 years. Work with our stewardship team to help improve the level of contributions, particularly once we get through the pandemic, as well as to help obtain additional volunteers to help grow our volunteer community. And the council, one item that I know Phil's talked about and the council has talked about briefly is to beginning a capital campaign towards funding the eventual expansion of the church and learning center. Let me speak to those last two items before I finish, and that is the learning expansion. There are plans, by the way, and this is not going to happen immediately, but there already are many blueprint plans for potential expansion of the church, which may become necessary, or is becoming necessary, not just for the Learning Center, but also as a community, a place for the community to gather. What I would expect over the next year or two is simply to revisit those plans, see what's possible still, and then begin focusing on that. The last thing I'll mention, which is never true, by the way, for those that know me, I still will say something else, but the last thing I want to say at this very moment is that volunteering is something I didn't know anything about 6 years ago. I would just encourage everybody to get involved. It's the best thing I've ever done, like you. But it is. It is the best thing I've ever done. So.
Good.
All right, so with that, but again, just give it a shot. I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect, and it was great.
Yep.
All right, enough of that. So with that said, I'm going to invite Nikki Bryan to come up and speak.
Hey. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Forgive me if I ramble and cue music if I'm taking too long in my allotted time. It's my pleasure to be here speaking with everybody today on behalf of the Children's Learning Center. For the last 6 months, I have had the opportunity to fulfill the role of the center director. The role was familiar, but personal first at taking the helm. However, it has come with many rewards, learning experience, and an ambition to continue building relationships within our community, our teaching staff, our church staff, and also council members to continue providing quality early learning for young children and families in our area. The Learning Center now has a total enrollment of 121 students, ranging from 6 weeks to 6 years old. We have a growing wait list of families who are eager to register with the children with our program and have been referred to our program through our existing families or have seen ads run through our social media outlets or driven past our new sign and LED display highlighting our presence in the community. We are ecstatic to see the rise in enrollments and bouncing back from what we know of uncertain times. We look forward to continued growth and contributions to our community. With growing enrollment comes the need to adjust and modify existing spaces to meet the needs of our children. And within the last few months, as Chris has mentioned, there's been significant building upgrades and room changes to accommodate the growth of our center. The Learning Center was fortunate to receive grant funds to help with these upgrades and are very appreciative of the hard work, dedication, and commitment by council members and by all towards creating necessary adjustments for our students, families, and staff. In addition to our building upgrades, council has also approved an increased budget for our Learning Center teaching staff. This has been, as you can imagine, very well received within the teaching staff and absolutely contributed to the retention of our existing staff and attracted new hires looking for a position in childcare. It came at a time when many childcare centers were closing due to a lack of returning staff, low pay, low enrollments, and mainly due to our economic hardships correlating with COVID, where many centers closed their doors for good. It continues to strengthen our relationships in the center with the understanding that the staff's dedication is recognized, and we will continue to reward their continued education efforts and commitment to our Learning Center, given the pay scales that is both competitive and stimulates motivation to grow in the field of early education. Looking ahead towards my goals for 2022, hiring a new assistant director, first and foremost, for the Learning Center, and continuing to build a positive work culture among teaching staff, students, and families within the center. I'm eager to begin the interviewing process next week, and I'm confident we will find a perfect fit. My goals are to create a collaborative work atmosphere between myself and the assistant director to maintain the center's goals and provide quality early learning experiences and supportive work environments necessary for success. Also, I would look forward to applying our grant funds and ordering materials towards classroom furnishings, developmental assessments, infant-toddler curriculum, technology, and health and safety equipment. I will continue to support our teachers with their professional development trainings and continued education ambitions. I will also continue building the program and the curriculum, begin working with teachers and staff on the implementation of our teaching strategies, creative curriculum, which is a project study approach, and the implementation of developmental assessments. We will apply the process of utilizing our technology to continue the communication with families, lesson planning, record keeping, and professional development trainings. I will continue partnering with community members and businesses to advocate for early learning in our area. I would like to involve our center families and teaching staff in any church projects, fundraisers, community awareness, volunteer opportunities to both integrate the church and the Learning Center goals as a collaborative force. I look forward to providing additional services for our families through meal programs, diaper and wipe programs that benefit our program and the community as well. I would like to continue focusing on the growth of our school-age program and summer camp curriculum for our school-agers, creating appropriate spaces and learning for children ages 5 through 12. The last 6 months of the Learning Center has had tremendous growth, whether through enrollment, staffing, building upgrades, or program enhancements, and it has been a gratifying journey that I look forward to continuing as we work together to provide a safe, nurturing, and memorable environment for our students present and soon to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. One thing I will mention with regard to the Learning Center is there's been a tremendous amount of funds. By tremendous, I mean nearly $300,000 that has been through grants through the state directly to Learning Centers, our Learning Center. Those funds, our goal is, so the improvements that we're referring to, we're trying to put those funds directly to work within the Learning Center. And for the state, they do require that you show where the monies are being spent. But we've been very blessed to have those funds and to have a successful learning center that has a waiting list, which I think, did you mention the wait list? And how many are there? Yeah. 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 So anyway, so thanks, Nikki. You're doing a great job, and I'm sure you'll find somebody that's. Are you having still difficulty with teachers, by the way? That's great. Yeah, that's great. All right. So with that, I'm going to reintroduce Brenda, and she'll talk about the strategic plan and the initiatives there.
Next slide, please. Chris has already talked a little bit in summary about the strategic plan. I'm going to sort of dig down one more level down and also remind us of what we're doing. The goal of the strategic plan is to take our thriving church and move it forward, to enable us to better serve and share God's word with more people as we strengthen and grow our own faith. The strategic planning process helped us identify and focus on the things most important to this congregation. If you want, please go to page 18 and 19 of the annual report. That's where the strategic plan summary is printed. Once we clarified our values, we coalesced over these 4 themes. These are our ideals. We developed a strategic initiative for each of them, and underneath that, we have developed goals to help us reach that strategic initiative. And all of the goals are measurable, achievable, and realistic. And that's very important because we really, really do want to succeed at what we're doing. The strategic planning team dug a lot deeper than that. If you go to the strategic plan, you can see that they developed specific programs and activities to help us reach the goals. There's this a whole other level underneath this level of the themes, the initiatives, and the goals, actual programs waiting out there for us to implement. Not only does the strategic plan provide the projects and tasks, many of them already have created implementation plans to make it easier, so that if somebody has an idea they'd like to do something, take on a task, we've done our very best to help and make it easier so we can have success. These programs and tasks are what is going to be the focus of this year of council, the themes, and the teams. The theme leaders are focused on keeping the teams working on the plans, as Chris said, and ensuring the teams work together on their programs. Not only that the teams work together, but the theme leaders will also coordinate amongst the themes, because inevitably when you look at what we're doing, there's always crossovers. We need to talk and work with each other all the time. And the theme leaders are the council members, so that we know there will be timely, two-way communication between the leadership, our teams, and among the themes. We need to know constantly where we are succeeding and where we may need to offer more support or change our plans. That's why we focus so heavily on the strategic plan at each council meeting. Again, we want to succeed. And we encourage anybody who would like to implement one of the programs, or if you have an idea or a passion, bring it forward to a theme leader or a team leader and just get it started. As you can tell from Chris, volunteering really makes an impact on your life. As I look back at 2021, at what we accomplished in relation to the strategic plan, I think we really need to celebrate. It was a very difficult year, as we all know, and we continued to be hampered by the virus restrictions, but we managed to thrive and take some enormous steps toward our most important goals. What we did in 2021 was just the beginning of setting the foundation where we can continue to build. One of the themes we developed was a communication theme, knowing that we had areas where we could improve in that. And one of the communication goals we set was using technology to enhance our worship, fellowship, and communication. We can kind of look back at that and laugh, because who knew that was going to be a necessity? But what we did with this congregation funding this new AV system is enormous. And I'm going back over it because I think we need to just sit and realize what we have done. We extended our reach beyond the front doors. People who could never participate before can join worship and other events from anywhere. And this is really big in moving forward and strengthening our faith and who we can reach. One of the biggest needs we identified was a fully functioning youth formation program and the participation of young families in our faith community. The close down from the virus brought our programs pretty much to a halt. As Chris mentioned, we took an enormous step towards reinvigorating those programs. We hired Jamie to be our youth and family minister in the fall. In her short time with us, she has already made big strides. Here are just a few of the things she's done. I don't mean to steal her thunder, but these are so important. I think we really need to think about it and realize how we're moving ahead. Unfortunately, the National Youth Gathering was canceled, but she's been working with that group and thinking about alternate ideas to get them into a gelled group, and they can coalesce and they can start doing things together. She's also working with a confirmation class of 15 children. I think that's just a great thing. She also now shares a weekly children's message with the children in the Learning Center classrooms. Those are big. Each little step is another building block. Her work incorporates some of the other goals we identified beyond youth, but it's important to her core work. She set up a family resource page on the website and regularly posts to social media. That is how our young families and kids communicate today. She started an online conversation. Her posts are creating a following and a dialogue, and that's just the beginning. She and Barry continually work towards cleaning up and organizing the website, and if you go out and look at it, you'll see there's a big difference from 6 months ago. These are enormous goals for us being able, again, building blocks for us to move forward in our communication goals. Sorry. What Jamie is doing is setting up the building blocks for our youth and family ministry. Once we have a strong foundation across the age groups of our youth, we can begin to incorporate the programs that were identified by the strategic planning team to strengthen our faith community across all the age groups. But first, we have to get these building blocks in place. As it relates to 2022, by mid-March, we will have set out our plans for 2022. That includes what programs, tasks, and activities we want to undertake to continue moving forward. It's the focus of our teams and themes for this year. It will be the focus at our February 27th council retreat, and to really dig in and think what we can do, how we do it, when we do it, what do we continue, what do we think may not be as successful that we're currently doing, and then our goal is to complete those plans at our March 14th theme night, and then we will share the plans with everyone over and over and over. We're setting these goals isn't really intended to be a limit to what we do, just to set achievable targets. There's still room for other things, possibly, so if you have an idea, a passion, please bring it forward at any time. We still need innovative ideas. Next slide, please. This is the structure of the themes, and you can see we've organized many of the teams within themes. It's really just so you can see who they are and who to work with. If you have ideas or you need to talk to somebody, this is a list of who to go to. The only thing I would say is faith formation is not open. Jamie is the leader of faith formation. And as you see, there are still 3 independent teams. They really work to serve all 3 of the themes and the entire congregation. We will meet our goals if we all work together. Volunteers are the secret ingredient in our sauce that turns our plans into reality. Participate in one new event or one new task. You don't need to sign up for long-term commitment. Usher once, help with a social event, help out with a food bank. See how it feels. Volunteering and serving is how we live our values and achieve our goals. Does anyone have any questions? In that case, It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, our Youth and Family Minister, Jamie. I didn't want to steal her thunder, but wanted to share just a little of what she has already contributed. We are very, very pleased to have her with us.
So I want to start just by saying how personally grateful I am for the vision of this congregation, because it is your vision and your strategic plan and your drive toward a considered future that has me standing here. So thank you. I would like to talk a little bit about a couple things. So we've got areas of focus, we've got guiding values, and we've got vision. Okay, so areas of focus is kind of the ways in which I've been trying to build our youth and family ministry in an existing context. Guiding values are the things that are kind of informing how I make those decisions and how I proceed, and vision is what I'm hoping that we can move toward. So in terms of areas of focus, I have been directing my attention toward worship presence, web presence, resourcing families, programming, relationship building, and community connections. So, worship presence, time for all ages has been kind of the anchor for that. We kind of adapted from the children's message model in an attempt to be flexible. There might not always be children with us in worship, but we also want to honor the fact that there may be kids with us online. We want everyone's presence with us to be recognized and valued, regardless of what that looks like. And we also wanted to kind of create a little bit more of an intergenerational spin on that moment so that it's relevant to all of us. So that time for all ages is kind of a core worship presence element that is meant to connect us across physical community and digital community and connect us across age groups. And just to kind of keep our youth and family ministry visible. Web presence my focus has been primarily on the youth and family page, which has included, there's kind of individual page breakdowns for different types of programming, but there's also the Faith at Home page, which is a resourcing page. And each month, a new Faith at Home practice comes out. It gets posted to the website. It comes out in the Dayspring. And it's my hope that that's another opportunity to kind of weave a connective thread through the community, that if we all kind of take on, to whatever degree feels right in our own contexts, these faith at home practices, we are strengthening our community and connecting our community in ways that don't require us to be physically in the same place at the same time. It's an opportunity to build around shared experience. So in addition to the youth and family page, as has already been mentioned, Barry and I have been working a lot on tightening up the website, cleaning it up a bit, and just in general, making that a resource where folks can come and easily find what we're about, what we're doing, how to get involved, and find things that are meaningful in their own faith practices. In terms of resourcing families, that Faith at Home piece is one of the kind of building blocks, as Brenda was talking about, just creating something that is consistent, that comes out, that is available to everyone, and it's easy, really easy to practice at home. In terms of visioning moving forward around resourcing families, it's my hope to kind of create some more things that are just flexible in terms of time and place. Certainly we want in-person programming, but as we have all experienced over the last couple of years, that is a difficult thing to know that you can count on. So I would like to build consistency around things that don't depend on physical presence. So there are, I'm looking right now at creating some Lent boxes that folks can pick up and take home, but just a lot of ways that allow families to be rooted here and rooted in their faith community while taking on a practice that they can practice with their kids at home, in their day-to-day lives, really kind of extending our reach and enriching our families' faith lives. Programming has focused primarily around confirmation, and National Youth Gathering as we've been getting started. As Brenda mentioned, the National Youth Gathering has just been canceled. So we are certainly disappointed to receive that news, but we are connected as a community and trying to figure out what we want to do next, and how we want to kind of redirect that energy. The confirmation class is off to a great start. 15 kids in the class, engaged and interested and connected, and it's been very cool. Relationship building in general, so relationship building in programming, but also just in the community. It has been one of my goals to get as much kind of one-on-one or one-on-family group time as I can, to make sure that as I move forward and as I progress and build programs and things like that, that it's growing out of relationship and it's growing out of existing needs, interests, where the energy lies in our community. So I want what we do to be responsive. So that's very important to me in terms of the relationship building piece. And community connections, I would like for folks in the community to be aware of us and to know that this is a place where they are welcome. So to that end, we have been working on making connections with Saucon Valley School District, with the Chamber of Commerce, with the staff at Bear Creek Camp, and just creating partnerships so that it's not, these aren't one-time, one-event relationships, but these are partnerships in which we are really advancing one another's work. And I think that this will increase our visibility and our familiarity in the community, and that folks will start to know even more, who Christ Lutheran is as a congregation, and that they are welcome here. So those elements, everything that we're working on together, that we're building, is informed by these values: imagination, accessibility, flexibility, consistency, relevance. And I'll speak a little bit to each of them because I think they each kind of help form what these things look like. Imagination, I think that everyone in a church at this point in 2022 has to have imagination. Our world has been tremendously changed and affected. What we are able to do looks really different than it did a couple years ago. So I am grateful to be in a community that is eager to imagine what it looks like to move forward and not married to very specific models, because I think that gives us the agility to move forward and create things that are relevant. I think that accessibility is very important because we are realizing we have consistent participation in worship and other online events from folks who are in, South Carolina, Florida, people all over the country. And while that will not be a part of everything that we do, it's not feasible for it to be part of everything we do, I do think that the awareness of accessibility is something that should always be on our minds. How can we make ourselves as available to anyone who wants to participate as possible? Flexibility, in the age of COVID, ministry in general has always required that you be flexible, but in the age of COVID, flexibility has to be at the center of what we do. We have to be prepared to pivot, have kind of set expectations that we're going to have to make changes, and be ready and able to kind of think on our feet. But with the flexibility, I really value and would like this to be kind of at the stable root of all we do is consistency, because I want people to know what they can count on. I want them to be able to trust the kind of who, what, where, when, why of what we're doing, and to recognize that in our flexibility and in our responsiveness, that there are threads that weave through what we're doing, both in times of, this event is always going to happen, or this relationship is always available in these ways. But I want folks to know what they can depend on, because I think that that's going to be significant in an era of, a lot of uncertainty. And relevance. I think that I'm really grateful that imagination and vision is at the core of kind of where you are moving as a community and what we are doing together, because it speaks to relevance. We want to be responsive and relational, and rather than just kind of creating things and setting them in front of people and saying, here's what we are and here's what we do, and participate if you'd like to participate. Instead, we say, you know, where are you? What is important to you? What do you need? What do you value? What do you like to do? And to shape our ministry, to always be shaping and reshaping our ministry around what is valuable to people in our communities. So with those areas of focus and with those guiding values, it is my hope that moving forward, we can start to hone in on the right expressions of a number of different things. So we want to return to Sunday morning education and faith formation for children and families. But that may not look like what it used to look like. So we are figuring out how that's going to express itself in the future, but that is one of our goals. We, as I said, want to be rooted in relationship, and one of the ways that you have really prepared the way for me in that sense is by putting together the strategic plan. You know, so I already have this kind of ready, this rich, ready resource of program ideas and things that folks already have allowed to grow in relationship and to have kind of set out as what is important to this community. So programming and web presence and all of these pieces will continue to be informed by those values in a vision for what this looks like moving forward, what youth and family ministries look like moving forward, and how we can provide something relevant, something of value, and something meaningful to the youth and families in our congregation. So I thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Jamie. With that, if we'll go to the next slide, please. The Trustees Committee report is next. I'll invite Joe Turulli to come up, who's the chairperson for the trustees. Just so everyone is who's not familiar, the trustees' responsibility is to ensure that the money we have invested currently is invested appropriately based on our goals. So with that, I'll let Joe speak.
What he said. You stole my thunder. So, for those of you who don't know who I am Brenda Turulli's husband. And I have been happily volunteered by Brenda and Pastor Phil and Chris to be the chairman of the Trustees Fund. And before I get started, I want to thank Mark Wilton. There he is. He was our previous chairman who did a great job and managed the funds well. Are we? I can't see where we are.
Yeah. Here, I have it right here too, Joe.
Okay, so we have 5 funds that are managed at Morgan Stanley, or kept at Morgan Stanley. The Endowment Trust Fund and the Memorial Trust Fund, those are the 1231 balances that you see there. Those are funds that are controlled by trust agreements between the donors of the money and the church. And also they're regulated by Pennsylvania state law. And we'll get into that in a minute. The Scholarship Fund is a general fund that members can contribute to as much as they want, and pastor and the council can decide how much money they want to take out of it every year. The Maintenance Fund and the Savings Alternative Fund are funds that Chris and I guess Mark you'll be talking about as part of the overall financial report. Probably not. Anyway, you will. Okay. That money, the maintenance fund, as stated, is money that's set aside for general repairs and maintenance at the church. And the Savings Alternative Fund, I believe, was money that was accumulated because of the government aid programs that we've parked at Morgan Stanley to earn a substantial amount of interest, maybe 1% a year, instead of having it sitting in a checking account. The maintenance fund and the savings alternative funds are sitting in short-term cash instruments so that the money is readily available for the church when it needs the money. So we've talked about those two things. So the last paragraph addresses the first two funds, the Endowment Fund and the Memorial Fund. We calculate, the trustees work with Morgan Stanley to manage the funds, to make sure that there's money available consistently every year for the church. And what we do is we use a 12-quarter rolling average to smooth out the ups and downs of the market, so that the church is never in a position where it's like you can't expect a stable amount of money every year. The Pennsylvania regulations say that those two funds can distribute anywhere from between 2% and 7% of that rolling 12-quarter average. And that's what we have done for those two funds, and we'll see that on the next slide. The money is invested in those two funds, 60% equities, then roughly 35% in fixed income bond and preferred stock, to provide us more stable, minimize the volatility in the funds. And then there's a couple of percentage points that sits in cash. On the next slide, you'll see what the recommendations are. So the Endowment Fund, we can contribute up to $17,000 to the church, and I believe you guys have accepted that. The Memorial Trust Fund, we can contribute up to $7,500. The Scholarship Fund, I don't know that you guys have asked for the money yet, but you can ask for as much as you want. And the Maintenance and Saving Alternative Funds are at your discretion. So as I said, we use a 12-quarter average to calculate the amount of the assets that are available for distribution, and it can be anywhere from 2% to 7%. What we do with Morgan Stanley is we work with them to forecast what the long-term expected return is on the assets, less a long-term forecast for inflation. We do that because what we want to do is maintain the purchasing power of the contributions in those funds. So if we're always contributing whatever the asset appreciation is every year without factoring inflation, the purchasing power of the money goes down. So we've decided to do that. I think, Mark, we decided that 2 years ago, 2019, the council approved that. So our goal is to maximize return with a conservative floor, factor in inflation to maintain purchasing power, and that way the church always can depend on a certain amount of money within a range. And that's pretty much it. The performance of the funds over the last 12 months, and our annual year ends in September, were actually pretty substantial. But that's because we were off a low base in 2020. The markets were haywire in 2020. But anyway, the Endowment Fund had a 15% annual rate of return after fees. The Memorial Fund was up 15%, and the Scholarship Fund was up 19%. And the reason for that was because we weight the Scholarship Fund more heavily to equities than the other two funds, because there's so much money in the Scholarship Fund, and the church asks for relatively little every year. So we can take a little more risk with the Scholarship Fund, and it's worked out. But that's only because there's so much money in it. We're not going to do that with the other two funds. Hold it. For those of you who don't know, the committee members are me, Lori Stewart, Gary Miller, Chris Nagy, and in the spirit of staying a volunteer, Chris Myers. And just so that you know that the money is in good hands, my background is in finance. I was a CFO for a company in New York, and I was volunteered to be on the company's pension and savings plan committee. Chris is a financial planner. Lori Stewart was in finance. Gary Miller was a CEO of a subsidiary of a major company, and Chris is a businessman. So we've got a broad spectrum of experience. And we work with Morgan Stanley to set investment objectives to invest the funds. And we meet quarterly with them to review the performance of the asset managers. And that wraps it up. So if there's any questions, you can see me after the meeting.
And I just want to point out the 17,000 of the Endowment Trust Fund and the 7,500 from the Memorial Trust Fund would be equal to the amount they are distributing on page 46 of the booklet, which would be 24,500.
Right, you can see that in the next committee report where they have all of the different organizations that are receiving the money. I think it's on the next set of slides. And those amounts are the same as last year. So there's nothing to approve, right? I mean, the next is the.
Now, Phil, do we need to approve the distributions from the trustees?
Distributions, and then, yeah, and then you have to prove where they're going to.
Right. So we do have to approve that those dollar amounts are.
So we are proposing to distribute 24.5 in total,
Yeah.
17 from,
Can you take your mask off?
oh, thank you.
So this will vote on. So
Right. We're recommending to distribute $24,500, 17 from the Endowment Trust Fund, and 7,500 from the Memorial Fund. Do I have a motion to approve the two distributions from the two funds? Speak up. Ally Myers proposes the motion. Do I have a second? Did you hear? Heard. Any comments, questions, discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. So we've approved the distribution of $24,500 from the trustees' accounts.
Thank you.
Now somebody else.
Yeah. So with that, we'll bring up Corky or Kim for the endowment to approve the distribution, where the distributions are being sent. So next, actually, you're on the slide. Thank you. Both the slides are right here. You'll have them.
Good morning. I'm Corky Blake. This is my wife, Kim, the better half. We don't have a background in finance, but we do know how to spend money, so that's why we're on this committee. Everything you need to see is on page 46. And like Joe said, the amount of $24,500 is the same as last year. We'd like to thank our committee members, besides ourselves, Karen Milla, Chris Myers, Mr. Volunteer, and Lee Wagner, who's here. Thank you. What we're tasked to do is take the money, split it in half, send half of it outside the church's walls, which is known as Benevolent Outreach, and then the other half stays in-house for projects that are recommended to us, and other things, and just refund some discretionary funds. We created a new one for Jamie or whomever in the future would happen to be in the Youth and Family Ministers discretionary fund. That's initial funding. You'll see for in-house 20 folding tables for outside use. That came about. We were told that whatever's there currently, there are tables for outside use, but nobody can move them, I guess, because they're so heavy. So we're looking to get rid of them. They would be used at like the outdoor yard sale that we have in June or anything else we do outside. Add another 500 to the adult speaker series. that we started funding last year, but because of COVID have not touched, so we'll continue to build that. Looking, just quick touch at the outreach funding. Community Action Committee of the Lehigh Valley, that's an umbrella group that we funded, have been partnered with for a number of years. That's the group that Alan Jennings headed for many years. I think a lot of people are familiar with Second Harvest, the big food bank that helps out the Hellertown food, that's part of it, among everything. New Bethany Ministries, Bear Creek Camp, K. Galgan Lifehouse, which is something our congregation has partnered with in the past. They're located in West Bethlehem. They help out young homeless mothers and their infants to give them a place to go and get their life started. Family Promise through Lehigh Valley is a new recommendation. Their executive director is Rosalind Kuba, who's a former office manager here at Christ Lutheran, and they do great things. They're based in Allentown mainly because I believe they get free rent at a church or a real estate office over there. And what they do is they work together just to meet the basic needs of displaced families, who may be homeless with kids and that, give them temporary sheltering and try and get them on their way. A number of churches participate throughout the Lehigh Valley by giving, like donating maybe a week of time to let these families stay at someplace in their church. We would be doing it from a financial standpoint this year. And then finally, we try to pick something that's outside the Lehigh Valley. In the past couple of years, we've been doing the LCA World Hunger / Good Gifts program. And it's our intent, if this is approved, to give them $1,000. We're going to hold off that money to the end of the year, because at the end of the year, so many other places do, they'll be matching gifts. So if we give them $1,000, it would be a $2,000 donation. So are there any questions with anything anybody sees here?
Okay, thanks.
May I have a motion to accept the 2022 endowment distribution recommendations? Kurt Rank proposed the motion. Second? Louise Wagner? Any questions, discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We will accept the 2022 distributions recommended by the endowment mission team. Thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank you, guys. All right, so we'll keep moving on. So next will be, next slide, please. So the financial team report, which will include the budget, a review of 2021 financially, and then Brenda will actually discuss the 2022 budget, and we'll approve the budget, or discuss and hopefully approve the budget. So next slide then, Ken.
What?
There you go.
Chris Uttard is our finance team lead. She is participating online today, but thought it might be better to have this presentation in person, so you're stuck with me. Let's look at, this is our 2021 financial report. The slide shows the profit and loss statement for the church. The first section shows the income received was about $2,500 less than the total budget. Payroll and payroll taxes were somewhat higher than the budget due to the bonuses given to the employees. As we move down, the team expenses were considerably under budget because we were restricted because of some of the COVID problems. This, in total, left the church with about $15,100 under our budget. What this did is leave the church with a net income for 21 of $22,300 and a net cash flow positive of $1,700 once the mortgage principal was paid. The end result was considerably better than was originally budgeted, but we really appreciate the congregation continuing to provide for the church even when it wasn't able to operate normally. Any questions on the church results? The next section shows the income and expenses for the Learning Center. Did I miss something? We're happy to report that the Learning Center's income was almost $226,000 higher than anticipated. Of that, $75,000 was due to a one-time grant, but the remainder of that income is because the Learning Center was able to be safely open and operate very close to capacity for much of the year. We are so blessed and so fortunate. Because there were more children involved, expenses were higher, but last year we were having difficulty hiring teachers, so the expenses for teachers were a little less than we would have expected. The Learning Center itself made a profit of $90,000 if you take away the $75,000 from the total, which is a wonderful, wonderful result. So the total profit for the year is $165,000. At the very bottom of the slide, we combine the church and the school numbers to show a net income of $181 and a net cash flow of $159. Any questions? Next slide, please. The next slide is our balance sheet comparing 20 to 21. As Joe started to talk about, we included in other current assets in the endowment section was our excess grant money that we moved to Morgan Stanley, partly so it could earn at least a little more interest. We all know how low interest rates are. But also, we wanted to keep each of our bank balances below the level, so we would make sure we always had FDIC insurance, just in case, you never know. The total of this account and our regular savings accounts equaled the designated and restricted funds. As noted in the financial team's report, during previous years, the balance sheet carried many fixed assets that were purchased a long time ago and really should no longer be there. Like many other nonprofit entities, the church does not depreciate those assets over time as they start to lose their money. So this year, we removed these items and wrote them off to retained earnings. Any questions on the balance sheet? Next slide, please. One of the things we did want to highlight are the projects that we were able to undertake in 2021. The AV upgrade was funded entirely by congregational contributions, and the very much needed window replacements, kitchen, and learning center upgrades were funded with grant money. The learning center projects included bathrooms and some appliances, a washer, dryer, and a refrigerator. These are huge helps that without some of these grants we would just never have been able to do, but sorely needed. Any questions? Next slide, please. This slide shows the 2022 budget. We ended up budgeting $48,000 more than the income that we received in 2021. It's a balancing act of some positives and some negatives. Included in that increase is a release of income for Jamie's salary for the year that we have in a reserve of 48. That's just happenstance. We also have $5,000 more learning center income in 2022, but that's offset by some miscellaneous income that we brought in 2021 that won't be repeated last year. But that is, again, balanced against a much better pledge response this year. So we expect our actual contributions to be higher, Jamie's salary come in, plus learning center expenses offset by a few items of miscellaneous income we won't have this year. So we have a net increase of $48,000 in income for 2022. Payroll for 2022, payroll expenses are higher due to our staff raises and the addition of Jamie. Our ministry teams are also budgeting higher amounts. We are hoping so much to be able to go back to a more open environment and continue the programs we had hoped to had before. So those, we're budgeting more for those. This gives us a net ordinary budget income of $11,500, but with a negative cash flow of $11,800 after the mortgage principal payment. While we would not normally budget to a negative number, Council and Finance feel that the income budget is conservative enough that we will be able to make up all or most of the difference through 2022. If revenues aren't stronger than projected later in the year, we may need to cut some spending to make sure that we have enough cash to cover the mortgage. One other change that was made in this year's budget was for the fresh food purchased for the food bank. Contributions we received for this in 2021 were a bit more than half of what we received in previous years. Council decided that since this is one of our strategic service goals, we will make up the difference from regular church contributions whenever there's not enough money given to make the food bank purchases. The current shortfall that we see right now is about $2,700. We're in the process of adding a food bank donation option to our Vanco system to encourage people to make donations to that fund, and hopefully that will alleviate the shortfall and we won't need to use any of our budget. Any questions? The bottom of the screen is the Learning Center budget for 2022. Income is budgeted to be about what we received in 2021 for tuition, excluding the grant money because that was a one-time thing. We do have a few openings for students, so we may have some tuition increase over that, but not substantial. Expenses are up considerably, mostly due to the salary increases that we gave last year so the Learning Center teachers could have a living wage. And when you increase wages, needless to say, your payroll taxes and insurance go up. We budgeted for a director, assistant director, and the number of teachers we should have for the number of students enrolled. It had been very difficult to hire teachers, but we know we're doing better. But we are missing our assistant director. So during January, we may have already made up the deficit between January and February. Unfortunately, working without an assistant director, we probably have made up the net deficit that's shown for the Learning Center. So, and we could have a tuition increase later in the year. So we're actually very comfortable with what we've budgeted here because in the end, we think that a combination of 2 or 3 factors will bring us to even or even a slight profit. We just wanted to budget a little bit conservatively. Any questions? If there are no questions, would someone make a motion to accept the proposed 2022 budget for the church and the Learning Center? Did you hear Nancy? Do we have a second? Dave Willard? Thank you. Any comments, changes? So, do we call a vote on accepting the 2022 budget as proposed? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. The motion passes. We have adopted the 2022 budget as proposed.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so, thank you. Sorry, that's all right. So, next slide then, please. So, this year we have 4 outgoing council members: myself, Sharon Coe, Sage Spawn, and Addie Anthony. And then we have Phil. Did you want to say something? No, not yet.
No, we always want to say thank you to those who served on our church council. And if you read Chris's report, he does talk about, you know, the benefit of serving the church. And someone's got to do it. And hopefully it's fun and meaningful. That's the key. Is it meaningful? Is it fun? Do you get something out of it? So thank you to all who do already serve in a variety of capacities. But if you're asked or if you have an idea and you want to participate, I hope you feel comfortable in either coming to me or a member of our council and offering those services. So where's Sharon? Sharon's here. Sharon is going off as one of our adult members. Thank you, Sharon, for your ministry. We have 2 youth. We have Sage and Addie, Sage Spun and Addie Anthony. Thank you for serving as our youth. And Chris, my buddy Chris. Hey, Chris did an excellent job. He has a lot of enthusiasm. We had a lot of fun. I always had fun at our council meetings, not something that I dreaded or, we had a lot of laughter. It was light. And, passionate about what we can do. And he's done a great job in really pushing us to realize the potential we have. So thank you. Chris? Great job.
All right, so with that said, we have two individuals that have volunteered to join council for 2022. That's Ken Doremus. Ken, of course, is handling the slides. And Ed Alosi. Where's Ed? Did Ed leave? I know they were. So Ed Alosi. So of course, if there's someone in the congregation that would like to volunteer as a council member, speak now or forever hold your peace. But we do need to make a motion and accept them to.
Before I make a motion, I do just want to thank Chris. He is a great leader, has set a great example for enthusiasm, moving forward, and getting done what needs to be done all the time. So thank you again. And I would like to say that I think Ken Doremus and Ed Alosi have skills and experience that will be wonderful contributions to our council as we move forward. So we look forward to their added guidance to what we do. So may I have a motion to elect Ken Doremus and Ed Alosi to the church council? Enid proposed the motion. May I have a second? Corky? Seconds? Did you get it? Corky Blake, second. Any questions? Any nominees from the floor before we vote? Anyone want to nominate or volunteer? I'll call for a vote. All in favor of electing Ed and Ken? All opposed? Motion carries. Welcome to the council. We hope it will be meaningful and fun. Thank you.
All right, next slide, please. And one last thing about council that I'll say, and that is that we've really tried to do a good job, I think, over the last, it actually started with Lou, of really trying to bring individuals onto council that have a particular skill level in something, right? So the idea is to have somebody that's good with finance, somebody that's good with art, somebody that's good with technology. So if there's something that you really are, that if you have a talent, please share it. So, all right, new business. Does anyone have anything new they'd like to discuss? Alice. Hang on one second, Alice. We need to get you.
You want to be famous?
I just have a question about nominations. There's no youth representative?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So at this moment, what we found is that we're not always meeting in person, number one. Number two, we kind of would like Jamie to become more familiar with the children within the church, and maybe sort of identify, rather than us choosing somebody, we sort of want Jamie to choose somebody to join council. So that certainly could happen. It still could happen this year. It's just that at this moment we didn't think it was best for us to, as a council ourselves, to do that. We think it should be really a role that Jamie would participate in. Anything else? Any other questions, comments? Okay, so with that, we need to, we want to adjourn the meeting. Do we adjourn with a prayer first? Do you pray first and then adjourn? Motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn.
Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Those arms always go up the fastest. Angela has proposed a motion. Do I have a second to adjourn the meeting? Mark? Anyone want to stay longer? All in favor of adjourning the meeting? Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned.
With a prayer, so we'll fill.
How about we go in peace and serve the Lord?
There we go. Thanks be to God.
Thanks for coming, all of you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, by the way. That was good. Thanks for seeing that. Was that you? Yeah, thanks.